Hello and welcome to my art vlog for February 2023. As a quick reminder, here are some of the goals that I set up for myself for this year. Mainly, I want to improve how I approach storytelling in art via composition. So this month has been a whirlwind, so this video is a bit different from January's vlog in that I'm trying to make it a bit more chronological. When it comes to art, like the mood that you're in when you're creating really tends to show up in your art whether you want it to or not. And I started off pretty strong with a lot of studies and learning, and then I got hit with a bizarre sort of art block, specifically when drawing faces, which led into a lot of just like playing around with different mediums and reevaluating my art toolkit, so to speak. You know, being an artist always has these high points and low points, but 2 steps forwards, 1 step back is always still a net positive, right? Also, I got this bottle cap fortune partway through the month, and if that shit ain't prophetic, then I do not know what it is. So let me start you off in my big sketchbook. Again, I started off the month quite strong. I planned out a bunch of studies that I wanted to do to whittle down the amount of reference images on my list. And then I later actually did these studies in gouache and acrylic gouache in my current watercolor sketchbook. In between a lot of these kind of focused study sessions, there's a lot of just kind of random stuff in the sketchbook. So I've got this drawing of Echo, as well as a couple other sketches and composition ideas. And then next up is the next wave of studies, if you will. This time was a couple hours worth of floral studies, which honestly carried the entire month. Florals were kind of my theme for the month unintentionally. Because I've been procrastinating a long time when it comes to flowers, and I finally just felt sick of not knowing how to do them and not knowing how to differentiate between basic flowers when it comes to art. So I took out a couple hours to actually do it and learn those silhouettes. So I kind of put those into action. There's a sketch of this lady wearing a flower dress. The flower dress was inspired by one of the reference pictures I had. And then I took this kind of basic idea and I redid it in ink and dip pens a couple days later. When I was doing the ink drawing, I really focused and pushed myself to actually take my time and draw out the little flowers, not to rush things. Something I really enjoy doing in dip pens is just kind of the slow process of putting down something permanent and then continuing from that point and building up on what you've already put down on the paper because it's permanent, right? And I really genuinely love the result of this ink drawing. So here's more of the random in-between stuff, lots of random faces and ideas, some sketches based on references I had saved, like poses or composition ideas or like simple shapes. Here is some, face angles, some torsos, and then there's one page that's planning of Ezra's outfit for the watercolor painting I'm working on because I'm still working on it. Got some pose studies of Sangyeon from the Generation Z video. And I want to revisit that at some point because I don't think I got all the information I wanted to get out of those studies. Yeah, and lots more in between drawings. I did film some videos of myself chatting about art updates, but honestly I just talk way too much all the time. When it comes to art, I can go on and on and on, like I'm doing right now. Hey. So I'm just gonna, chop out the bits that are reasonably paced. Yeah. So, sorry, it's gonna be a bit random and patchy because this month was weird for me, alright? So, yeah, around this point is where I started to feel rather, inadequate about drawing faces, so I slowed it down and I took the time to sketch out the basic guidelines for facial anatomy, which I remember. And I found that this did help because it forced me to slow down and go back to the basics, really. Next up, here are some sketches of Echo. I was just thinking of compositions that I might come back to. Yeah, I think the first one there I really like actually, so I might do that in watercolors at some point. And then just an onslaught, an avalanche of more random sketches and ideas. And then next up is a bunch of hand studies. Thank you, line of action, for existing. And that pretty much wraps up the month in this larger sketchbook that I have. And then from here on out, we delve into chaos. I got started on the painting of Ezra that I had started planning last month, and this is where somewhere in the middle here, I started feeling really like, yeah, about it. It was like this feeling between anxiety, art block, and like decision paralysis, because like when it comes to larger paintings like this, what you put down is kind of permanent, right? You have to make a decision about what to do, and this particular painting, the colors and the pose, and there's just a lot of important decisions that I have to make because I'm challenging myself that I'm, not able to do right away, if that makes sense. Anyways, I ended up taking a bit of a break from the painting itself, and I kind of switched gears to gouache and like abstracted simplified work. So this included this little like screenshot redraw in gouache of Hellgirl, and then a watercolor painting of Toontown flowers, which I really loved that. I like how the lily turned out especially. At some point around this time, I finished the tree gouache painting that I started last November, and then after finishing it, I went to clean my palette and pretty spontaneously decided to rearrange my entire gouache palette. So like chipped out the colors, and I chipped out the like dried and contaminated gouache into like one of those basic plastic palettes, and I just started like mixing colors and throwing shapes onto this old acrylic board that was my mother's many moons ago. I didn't like plan for this to end up being flowers, but it's kind of just what happened because, florals had been on my mind this month, and I was enjoying doing them, right? And I really love the color palette that resulted, even though I wasn't feeling super good about my art. I really I'm genuinely content with how this turned out. I also did a lot more gouache, like mixing, color testing, and more studies to work through like the references that I had. Just kind of like basic things, kind of going back to the building blocks rather than being creative and doing something original, just pretending that I'm learning instead. A lot of these middle art blocky bits of the month were spent reevaluating my the creative tools that I have at my disposal. So I revisited these metallic inks that I haven't used that much, and I stared at my doc cards and pined over the prospect of new watercolors. In particular, I'm craving Anthraquinoid Red by Daniel Smith. It's more of this warm/neutral red rather than the PV19 based Quinn Red that I have in Daniel Smith, and the Opus Alizarin Crimson. Yeah, both of those use PV19. And I'm, I really just want it. I'm missing my, Van Gogh Madder Lake Deep. I'm missing those undertones that are not pink all the time. And I've been feeling really burnt out from trying to finish the Opus tubes. I just really want to move on to using the Daniel Smiths. So I decided to pour out what's left of them into full pens. And the main reason why I did this is so I could better quantify exactly how much paint I have left of them. So I do still want to finish them as soon as possible, but I think I'll let myself buy a couple new paints, maybe after I finish what's left in my plastic palette. Then slowly I'll work through the full pens, and then I'll fill the plastic palette with my Daniel Smiths, because I prefer the plastic ones since they have more mixing space compared to the tin palette that I have the Daniel Smiths in currently. Moving on, another thing that I did while reevaluating my art supplies and my tools was I was looking at extra papers that I have, and I realized that I haven't really touched my Arches hot press paper, so I did this little painting of a mermaid, because I was looking at my Daniel Smiths, and I was looking at the cobalt turquoise. It's either cobalt teal blue or cobalt turquoise blue. Either way, whatever it's called, I haven't used it in a while. It scares me a little bit because it's so heavily granulating and it's opaque, and I'm not a big fan of opaque watercolors. Anyways, this paper, I used to use it a lot more, so I would cut it into smaller sizes and I would tape it down onto these foam core boards so I could work on multiple projects simultaneously. This was before I had tried out watercolor blocks, which I've learned now that I much prefer. I do want to get more watercolor blocks. I currently only have the one big one, and it is a little bit limiting, feeling like I can only work on one watercolor painting at a time. Anyways, I'm so bad at talking. I continuously ramble, and I'm doing it right now. Anyways, with the extra Arches hot press paper, I decided to make this mini handmade watercolor sketchbook with 6 of the sheets, so that gives me 48 pages total. I used to make these little sketchbooks all the time a few years back, and I have this sticky note. I've had the sticky note for probably like well over half a year that just says impulsive mini portraits, because I've been missing that feeling of being able to do these like experimental little portraits and using color palettes that I would never use in a full piece, and just exploring textures and combinations and things like that. And I've been missing it. And then around this time, I also realized that I'm actually nearing the end of my current watercolor sketchbook. The next one that I have planned, I already have it. It's like this larger Strathmore one, and I want to make it a little bit prettier than my typical sketchbooks because it's larger and it's like hardcover. Perfect, like 48 pages, just like the mini sketchbook that I made. I'm not going to do it like one-to-one exactly, right? I'll, leave some more experimentation pages and such on the mini sketchbook, but, it's kind of working out nicely, and that's why I decided to go with 6 pages instead of the 5 that I originally planned for the mini sketchbook. Yeah. Towards the end of the month, I started one last study, which was this moon bridge composition, which I lost steam for rather quickly. I think just because I got sick towards the end of the month, and yeah, I'm still a little bit sick, which is why I sounded a lot worse a couple days ago, which is why I couldn't do the voiceovers until now, but hopefully it doesn't sound too bad. Anyways, I lost interest in it, which is really unfortunate because I was really looking forward to doing this one, so I might revisit it eventually, but I forced myself to finish it on the 27th. I slapped some pencil crayons on top, and then I went over that with my water brush because I was just feeling so lazy. I was being lazy, really. That's what it is. And I think that's okay, right? I was burnt out. I really wanted to finish it before the end of the month. God knows why. Yeah. I also, on the 24th, I attended an online art demo about urban sketching by Nishant Jain. I might be pronouncing that wrong, aka the Sneaky Artist. I think that's his handle. Another thing I did towards the end of the month, I got a couple new art. I don't even want to say supplies. They're basics. I first grabbed this flat water brush because I saw it I saw a couple artists using it. I've had the regular round one for a while, and I really want to get better at using flat brushes, so I splurged a little bit on and got this. I have not tried it out yet, but I'm excited to do it. Next, I grabbed these simple plastic palettes. In the future, if I wanted to, I could work on simultaneous gouache portraits or gouache pieces using different color palettes. The last thing that I got was this very pretty washi tape. I have never had proper washi tape before. I've only ever used masking tape and drafter's tape and electrical tape in crafting and stuff. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's this really dumb little thing, and it's sparkly and it's pretty, and I want to put it on the spine of that handmade watercolor sketchbook because I think it'll look pretty, and I'm excited. And all that rambling brings us to the end of February 2023. So even though this month felt super chaotic, I'm genuinely really proud of what I accomplished. Florals are something I've found really daunting for a long time, and even though I'm eons and light years away from being an expert, I already feel like I'm reaping some of the rewards of putting in that minimal amount of effort. Yeah. I also did what I personally feel is a lot more mixed media exploration than I normally do this month. And, you know, as a hobby artist, like, I know that my progress is going to be slower than someone who does it professionally, and I'm okay with that, right? It's about the journey, not the destination. It's all about the big picture and figuring out how to make whatever you have in your arsenal, whether it's your skills or your knowledge or even the tools that you use. It's like figuring out how to make it work for you and produce things, you know, produce things that you like while enjoying the process, right? That's really, you know, that's so much juicier than I anticipated it being. But on that note, I will bid February farewell, and I will see you soon.